Hi everyone, I'm Paige Abbott of Sana Psychological. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of Alberta, and I would just remind you that videos and self-help material are awesome, but they are not a complement for professional therapy. If you are in need of some services, I do encourage you to reach out to your local area. Today I'm going to be continuing with step 4 in the Practical Steps of Change series that I've been working on over the last many weeks. And this step, although it sounds easy to say, it's maintenance and sustaining the progress that you've made, obviously is probably one of the more challenging, if not the most challenging step for people, because it's so common that once we get going, initially we're propelled by that momentum and that excitement. Wow, I'm doing things differently. I'm finally taking these steps that I want to take, and we're starting to notice some change. So those initial days and weeks, sometimes even months of change are very invigorating. They're very exciting. And then we start to hit this plateau where now the change is still happening, but it's not as dramatic. It's not as different as it was before. It's now becoming part of our daily life, and it's not as exciting. So our brains start to create these stories, and this is where people do find themselves at a high risk of falling back into some of the old patterns or behaviors that they were trying to move away from in the first place. And this can lead to a lot of discouragement and frustration for people. So as much as it's sometimes easy to disregard or downplay the importance of this maintenance of progress and sustainability step, from my perspective, it's actually one of the most important steps in the process of change. And I wish I had all the answers and the miracle ideas of how you can maintain progress once you've started to make some change. But the reality is it's challenging, and it requires lots of different ways to support yourself. So I'll do my best to offer you some tips and some suggestions, but this is where you may want to pull in some professional support, whether that's a therapist or a life coach or some kind of mentor who can help to keep you accountable, and where you can keep talking about your personal challenges and struggles that you're experiencing in maintaining the progress that you would like to. So first off, I would encourage you to really start paying attention to what are some of the challenges that you're noticing. How is your thinking and your brain trying to bait you back into stepping into those old patterns that you're trying to get away from? So essentially, what are the stories? Is your brain telling you this is boring? Is your brain telling you we're good now, we don't need to do this anymore? Is your brain saying, maybe this wasn't as helpful as we thought, and the old way was the better way? Or is there another story? Are there all of those stories? It's important to spend some time really paying attention to what is your brain saying, and how is it trying to essentially trick you out of being authentic and true to your goals and the progress that you would like to make. I would encourage you to write these down. This is where, if you do already have some professional or external support, even if that's informal support like a friend or a group that you've been working with, then you can bring some of these statements forward to that group and just share, this is what my brain is telling me. And you may start to have some gentle challenging and some feedback from the people around you to then look at what's the truth in these statements that your brain is saying. Is it actually true that it's not working? Is it actually true that you're all good now and can go back to some of those old ways? Or is this the brain's way of really trying to just let go of some of these new behaviors that you've been working on and trying to pull you back into those older, probably more rewarding and dopamine-rich behaviors and actions that you are trying to step away from? Because the reality is our brain is always going to want to go for the dopamine-rich sources of activity. So there's always going to be some degree of vulnerability in whoever you are, whatever you're doing, because the brain will want to pull us in that dopamine-rich direction. And usually what provides the highest amounts of dopamine are not behaviors or substances or activities that are very health rewarding or health rich for us. Usually they are behaviors that some people use that term self-destructive to describe. I don't believe that it's self-destructive. It's our brain on the hunt for that dopamine, and it will go wherever it needs to get it. So that idea that I'm all good now really is a falsehood, because this vulnerability will continue to exist in all of our brains, in some more than others, for the rest of our lives. So that's something that we're always going to have to be mindful of. What else do we need to focus on in sustaining change? Well, if you are really noticing that you're feeling quite exhausted, if you're feeling pretty burnt out, if you're just feeling completely overwhelmed, then to me that's an indication that you've maybe stepped too far too fast. So earlier on in the series, I talked about the importance of making your goals small and realistic. So really embracing that bite-sized change approach. We don't want to take on too much too fast, because that can set us up for not only a sense of disappointment, but for exhaustion. So if you're feeling really drained by this, chances are you may have taken on too much. So I would encourage you to take a few steps back to revisit what are the steps of change that you've been making, and do you maybe need to focus on one or a few of them and maybe modify those rather than whatever you have been doing. You can incorporate those other goals later on, but taking on all at once just maybe wasn't sustainable and maybe wasn't realistic for you at this point in time. And that's okay. There's nothing to be ashamed of or disappointed in there. It just means that the plan that you had originally created probably isn't a very sustainable or realistic one at this point in time if it's leading to that feeling of exhaustion. So revisiting your action plan, revisiting the realisticness of your steps that you've set up for yourself, and also focusing on building in rest so that you can rejuvenate and capitalize that energy once again so that you have that momentum to keep moving forward. Are you feeling discouraged by the messages from the people around you? As we try to do something different, we may get some pushback that people around us, although they may in words and in theory be supportive of us changing, they might have actually been getting quite a bit out of the old version of us. And so we may start to hear comments from loved ones such as, do you really need to keep doing that? Or how long is this going to go on for? That again? Those sorts of comments. If you are hearing those sorts of statements, that definitely can take the wind out of the sails in terms of our motivation to keep going with change. So obviously that's a bigger and probably a deeper issue that, again, go to your journal, go to some supports, go to a professional to talk through, because this is a challenging one. Are you willing to sacrifice yourself and your health goals for somebody else? Part of your brain may say yes, but I would really encourage you to say no, that you are worth those action steps of change. Hopefully the path moving forward will be to learn how to communicate, how to have boundaries, and how to navigate that pushback and that resistance from the person or the people around you who are having a difficult time with that change. There's lots of different obstacles that can come up, but the biggest ones are that it's too much too fast and therefore not sustainable, the pushback from other people, and the pushback from our own thinking and our own brain that wants us to go back to those dopamine-rich behaviors. There might be other challenges that you've noticed in sustaining and maintaining progress. So if so, I hope that you will look at those and look at, okay, how can I address this and how can I work with this differently so that I can continue to move forward. Making your goals and your action steps realistic is a key one. Bringing in fun, bringing in healthy fun, bringing in rest and self-care is another essential part of the process. We can't just have life be all work and effort and no rejuvenation, no fun, no lightness. We need that to counterbalance. And I do add in that descriptor of healthy fun, because we do need the fun that we do to be in alignment with our goals and our values, not falling back into some of that dopamine pursuit. And we do need to have boundaries, we do need to be assertive, and we do need to be an advocate for ourselves. So people may not be totally happy with the steps that we're making and the ways that we're changing. Can we be okay with that? Can we work on strengthening our relationship with ourselves through our actions, through our words, through how we're treating ourselves, so that even in the face of some pushback, we're able to be strong for ourselves and advocate for the changes that we know we want to see. So I really hope that you'll spend lots of time. You're going to be in the maintenance and sustainability zone for a long time, I hope. So continuing to just take an evaluation of where you're at, the challenges that you've had, and any obstacles that have come up along the way, as well as what's helping you to maintain your progress, are very important parts of the change process. Even after change becomes pretty habitual and pretty routine, there are still going to be things that our brain and that life throws at us that tries to send us off track. So doing a periodic evaluation, once a week or every couple of weeks, of how did the week go? How was I feeling about things? Was my plan and my routine, was it realistic? Do I feel like I'm moving and staying in the direction and the path that I want to be in? These are all really helpful questions to ask yourself. So you may find yourself coming back to this video, some of the principles in it, multiple times. You may find yourself talking with yourself and with your support people multiple times as well about some of these same obstacles that keep coming up, or new ones that come up along the way, but really emphasizing that this maintenance phase is an essential one for ongoing health. We don't just want to live our lives with those short bursts of change and activity followed by a regression back into a lack of activity. We want to keep that progress going. So some of the energy that you put into the initial action phases, I hope that you can now carry forward into the maintenance phase, because you are worth it and you deserve the changes that you had decided to seek out for yourself. Thanks so much for watching up until step 4 in the Practical Steps of Change series. I have one more video where I kind of wrap up some of my final thoughts about some of the practical steps that people can take in achieving their personal goals. So stay tuned. Take care for now.